Welcome and good morning. You're watching Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio on beautiful Marcus Street in Corning. We have a lot to get to today. We have two guests. This is the first time we're going to try two guests in the already very quick hour of Frankly Speaking. Our first guest is Christine Frizzell. She's an author out of Indiana. She wrote two books about Bath, New York, one called The Boys of Bath and the other The Orphan Girls of Bath. She's going to be joining us to tell us why did she write two books about Bath when she's from Indiana and what those books are specifically about. That's going to come up in just a little bit. She's our first guest. Our second guest, we're going to be talking to Chemung County Sheriff Bill Schramm. Looking forward to speaking with him. We talked to the Steuben County Sheriff just on Tuesday, and that, of course, Jim Allard. So we'll be talking with Bill Schramm in just a little bit. On tomorrow's program, we'll be talking with Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. So we have a busy week left. This week's going quick. The show always goes quick. We have a lot of topics to discuss. We just have a couple minutes already before I have to take a break. But let's go to first something that's very important. And again, I know I thank you every time, but thank you so much to everybody who has contacted me, who has sent a text or an email. We're going to try to read an email later on and perhaps a text. But you can text during the program. So if you have a question for Chemung County Sheriff Bill Schramm, you can still send those in. It's not too late. There's all the contact information. I should probably move over a little bit. And I will say, though, that the interview with author Christine Frizzell, that is pre-recorded. So no time for questions on that. I recorded that last week. I think you're really going to enjoy that one, as well as with Bill Schramm, of course. So there's my contact information. It's not too late to get those questions in. All right, a quick news story here before we go to break. If you look on your screen here, disturbing new trend, as it says here, and this is from, I don't remember what article this is from. I apologize. This stating out of Albany by Larry Rulison that the Federal Reserve of New York's latest Empire State Manufacturing Survey shows a continued drop in manufacturing activity in the state. Now, this goes back to the story we mentioned yesterday with the high taxes of New York ranking number one. It's not necessarily a surprise that manufacturers aren't looking at New York. That's an unfortunate scenario, but when you look at, let's, for instance, see the budget coming out of Albany, where you always taxing the rich, right? You're always going after these cash cows. Well, eventually, you can't milk a stone. Eventually, that money's going to run up. So it seems like I'm always starting with bad news. But I wanted to mention that because it ties in with what we promised on the program day one, which is to bring you the stories that affect us. This disturbing trend, as the headline says, this is going to be something that we have to keep in mind in New York as people are leaving in droves, as businesses seeing us as a not friendly state to do business with. This is only going to make matters worse for a state that is already struggling. And in my humble opinion, the budgets that we are seeing out of Albany are not going to help matters at all. So we've got a couple more economic updates. Let me take a short break because we want to get ready for Christine Frizzell, who's going to be with us in just a moment. Again, pre-recorded, but I think you're going to find these books fascinating. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio on beautiful Marcus Street in Corning. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. I understand that we're having a little sync problem with the audio, but while I get that figured out, I'm going to go to a pre-recorded interview with Christine Frizzell. And by the way, thank you to people that text and emailed if there's any technical difficulties. Obviously, I said we are learning. This is all brand new to us, and I think so far it's been going relatively smooth. So if you say anything like that, you can always text that number on the bottom of the screen so that we can get to the bottom of it. But right now, this is a pre-recorded interview with our friend Christine Frizzell, author of Boys of Bath and Orphan Girls of Bath. I think you'll enjoy it, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here in the Hesselson studio. This interview brought to you by M.A. Neal Financial Services. We have on the line this morning the author of The Boys of Bath and The Orphan Girls of Bath. Christine, thanks so much for being on the show.
Hey, thank you so much, Frank. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to learn about these books because I did a little research. And tell us about your connections to the books, but also the amazing story which led you to write these books.
Sure. My name is Christine Friesel. I'm in Bloomington, Indiana, and my mother was cleaning out her house in Fort Wayne. This was back in 2009, and in her basement she found a diary, a Civil War diary of my ancestor. We never really knew him. I said, "Who is this guy?" As a librarian and a genealogist, I was like, "Wow, this is right in my wheelhouse. I'll just get into this." My father said, "Oh, it's pretty boring. It's not very exciting." And I said, "Well, just give it to me, and maybe it'll be a prize. You know, you can think of yourself like in the Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, the prize, the golden ticket." I thought, "Oh, this is going to be great. This is going to be worth money. This is going to be great." And what I found was an adventure that took me like 12 years to research, and I just fell in love with Charlie Brother, the Civil War Marine who wrote this diary. I fell in love with Bath, New York, with Steuben County. And I'm not a crazy person. I'm just well-tempered, but I just really found this story needed to get told.
Well,
so I wrote a book called The Boys of Bath.
And to find a gem like that, just sitting there that you didn't even know existed, it sounds like something you'd see on the History Channel, right?
Oh, yeah. And people can relate to this. You know, you polish something up and you're like, "Oh, look, it's all shiny." And then you wonder, does anyone care? Is it just me and my little fantasy island in my head, or is this really something significant to historians, to Steuben County, to the military, to the Marines, to the Navy? Right. Charlie Brother was out at sea, so I didn't know a lot about naval history and the Civil War, but I learned a lot.
And what led you, after you wrote that, you sound like you were still inspired, so was that what led you to write The Orphan Girls of Bath?
Right. Well, The Boys of Bath is also a story about why no one knew this story.
Oh, okay.
Charlie Brother faced a lot of obstacles after the war. He also did a lot of cool things, but he faced a lot of obstacles after the war. He moved to Iowa, but he constantly came back to Bath.
Okay.
Bath, he loved Bath, but his obstacles after the war, his daughter wanted to suppress the story because it was just not pleasant. I suppose they did that a lot. I know some families that just don't talk about that side of the family, whether it's shame or mental health or just divorce.
Sure.
But this side of the family was never talked about. So his daughter was so loyal to him. We thought at first that maybe she was embarrassed, but we learned through the process that she was so loyal to him that she would not let anyone know the story. And so the Girls of Bath, or the Orphan Girls of Bath, is really about Charles Brother's daughter, and it continues this interesting conversation and complexity about the father and daughter relationship and how there's the loyalty there is just really interesting.
So how long did it take to write this second book, or do you consider this all a part of the process, the 12-year process?
Well, I knew that I had to deal with his daughter, Frances, or Fanny. I knew I had to work with her, but I decided to cut her out of the Boys of Bath and give her her own special story, and that's a novel. I realized I could do a lot more inventive memory and deal with the repressed memories she had by working with a novel. So and I was able to go much faster. Imagine that. I didn't have to deal with footnotes or source citations. The Boys of Bath, I spent so long researching and making sure I had all of the accurate source citations. I had about 1,000 footnotes, and I realized I needed to be, I think I needed an intervention at that point. So decided nobody wanted to read all those footnotes, so we finally just decided to treat the boys with a little bit more readability. But I really think people enjoy the story of hearing about what happened to them before, during, and after the war.
Can I just say, your passion sounds like, as you'd call them boys and girls, it sounds like they're your own children.
Oh, yeah, I was raising two boys during this time when I was writing The Boys of Bath, and I really wanted to understand how could these young men join the Civil War, not knowing, the adventure. And it happens today. It happens every day. Men join the military, boys join the military sometimes, and they come out as men. But the love and the affection of your brother, and being willing to be the first to fight, to be willing to stand in front of a cannon for your love of your brother, your hometown, your country, it was just remarkable. And I realized I took a lot of things away from the story that helped me, I hope, to raise better children.
What an amazing story right from the beginning, and the reviews seem to be amazing.
Oh yeah, I'm getting a lot of people are learning more about Steuben County and Bath. I'm writing a new book on Canona.
Oh, really?
I'm very attached to that region, but I think people are learning that because Charlie wrote this diary, and because because I did this research and he was able to be traced. He died in 1917, so I'm tracing Steuben County history all through that time period. If your listeners can tolerate this reference, I really do think that if Steuben County had a Forrest Gump of the 19th century, it would be Charlie Brother. You just hang out with him, and you'll see a side of the 19th century that just really has not been accessible until now because of him.
Isn't that amazing? Were you able to visit Bath? Or I know you were, and I want to talk about them in a moment, the Steuben County Historical Society, but were you able to visit and kind of get the feel of Bath?
Oh, yeah, and it was so much fun. His house is on Morris Street. It's still there.
Oh, wow.
It was one of the first houses built in Bath. His ancestors, and Charlie Brother knew his ancestors, and he knew that they were connected to the Revolutionary War. He knew that they were part of this country. He loved George Washington up until the very end of his life. He loved George Washington, so it's very patriotic. It makes sense. Bath is a patriotic community.
Oh, sure.
Especially with the Veterans Hospital there. But realizing when I went to visit Bath and I went to the Steuben County Fair, I just have to tell you this, Rick. I don't know if you have time for this.
Of course.
I wanted to go hang out at the Steuben County Fair because my ancestor, Henry Brother, has helped establish the Agricultural Society there. And so, of course, the fair was, I have the best pickles, I have the best cucumbers.
Of course.
But here's the cool equipment I have. And so Charlie Brother really loved the fair. It was just like, something to do besides the farm. It was a very exciting time. So I wanted to go to the fair, so I was able to go there. This was during COVID, and so it was like you finally got, the fair was open.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted a people watch. I just loved the colorful people. And I have to tell you, I was just watching this. The further I got away from the entrance of the fair and I was going back to the agricultural area, and I saw some the goats and the chickens, and that's kind of a new experiment for me.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, I was people watching, and I saw this group of young people, the same age as Charlie Brother and his friends when they're just before the war broke out. And I saw this group of young men walking through the Steuben County Fair, and these young girls were behind them. And I have to tell you, Frank, those young girls were not on their phones. Yeah. It was just remarkable. I was like, oh my gosh, a group of young people. And the men were walking, the young men were walking, and the girls were like totally just idolizing these young men. And I thought, they acted like they owned the place. And I talked to the sheriff, and he said they did.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? That is so neat. I'm glad you got to see the fair is one of my favorite times of year.
Oh, yeah, it was wonderful.
Well, that's amazing. So you mentioned the website, charliebrother.com. That's not where you necessarily go to purchase the book, but you can find out more. Is that correct?
Right. There was too much. I couldn't put everything in the book because Bath, New York has really impressive history with those men who joined the Marines, but also who joined the war. A lot of people don't know in Bath that the Howell torpedo was invented by John Howell, who was one of the guys who influenced Charlie Brother to join the Navy. So the Howell torpedo was invented by one of your guys. Oh,
isn't that neat? And I know I mentioned this earlier, but how helpful was the Steuben County Historic Society? Because I recently joined, and they're amazing people, and I'm so impressed with the work that they do.
Yes, I want to encourage your listeners to support the Steuben County Historical Society because there's so much rich history in that organization and the passion and the excitement they have for their local history. And I just will tell you, you can get a great story on Hallmark and Disney, but local entertainment is remarkably, you just build on it. You just go from one rabbit hole to the next.
Yes.
And it's yours, and it's accessible, but you just got to work with that local historical society. Volunteering is another way to help that organization bring out the story that's nowhere else.
Right.
It's right there.
And it's such a small fee to join each year. And I'm telling you, getting their newsletter, I look forward to it because you learn so much about our area that I wasn't familiar with.
Right, and when you know where you live and you know what the people and the stories, when you're driving down a road, you treat the area differently. It's sort of like when you rent a house and you throw red Solo cups all over the place because you don't know who lived there.
Yeah.
But when you know who lived in the house and you know the story of the region, you just treat it better.
Right.
You don't spit on the sidewalks, I guess.
That's right. Well, I know we can go to charliebrother.com and find the link to Amazon, but Amazon is most likely the best place to purchase a book, right? And they still may have a few copies with the Steuben County Historic Society, so we could ask them too.
That's right.
Well, perfect. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. This was great. I've learned so much, and I can't wait to learn more.
Thank you so much. It was great to talking to you.
All right. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking, live from the Hesselson studio. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. And this interview brought to you by M.A. Neal Financial Services. I'd like to thank our guest this morning, Chemung County Sheriff Bill Schramm. Good morning.
Morning.
What do you think about the TV gig? A little different than radio.
It certainly is.
No more walking in your pajamas like last time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. We've got a lot to get to. We had Sheriff Allard on from Steuben County, and so a lot of these issues, unfortunately, are going to be kind of the same because it seems like Chemung and Steuben are dealing with many of the same unfortunate issues. So let's start with the opioid epidemic and what seems to be a scourge of fentanyl cases.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're not seeing any let up on that.
No.
Our guys are administering Narcan on a regular basis, and it's very unfortunate, but oftentimes they're very successful with it, so I guess that's the plus side. It gives some of these folks that are struggling with these demons a chance to, maybe turn that around a little bit. So not only are we using it on the street, but we're using it in our jail.
Yeah.
We have individuals coming into the jail, and if they're clever enough to sneak something in, we're seeing the same issues there as well. So it's just a problem all over.
And doesn't that tie in with is it called MAT program or MAT?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about what that does for the people that are in, and that's when they're already in jail, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So it's basically, it mandates a program for people with those addictions to ensure that they are given the proper medications, that they're put into a set regiment through our medical staff. And in addition, it actually equips them once they leave the facility that they have the proper tools, when they go, and they get connected to the proper services.
So that's probably the important part. When they're out, because you go back to that circle, or hopefully not.
It's certainly easy to control somebody when they're in that environment.
Sure.
But once they get out, exactly what you said, they go back to the same people in the same places, and oftentimes have the same results.
Yeah. I'm going to have you move that mic a little bit closer to you, if you don't mind. It sounds good. I think it'd be a little clearer. Going back to the fentanyl and with Narcan specifically, I'm surprised, and I mentioned it with Sheriff Allard, it's like when they hand it out almost at the door now. That's how bad these overdoses have become.
They are. We're actually handing it out to some of the individuals to get released from jail that are in the MAT program. We're seeing just the public. The public has access to them. And I have mixed feelings about that. I understand the concept behind it, but I also think it sends a bad message. It says, hey, we don't have to worry about our behavior. If worst case scenario goes down, we have something for you. So I don't know that that's a good message to send.
No, that's what scares me about it. And as was mentioned the other day, it still costs taxpayers.
Sure.
And I'm sure it's not cheap. I don't know, but none of that stuff is cheap. But what can we do about this? Because what we were talking about earlier, fentanyl, sometimes people are taking, they don't even know that's a part of what drug they're using. So that's pretty terrifying.
Well, I know if this might be one of the things you talked about, but these are one of the pushbacks we have about the sticker stores.
Yeah.
These are unregulated facilities that you have no idea what you're buying. There's no regulatory body that's overseeing them currently. And, some people equate it to playing Russian roulette.
Yeah.
Sooner or later you're going to get a wrong batch and it's going to punch your ticket. So.
And I'm glad you mentioned the sticker stores because we've talked about it in the past, but leave it to New York State to say, here, everything's legal, but we don't have any regulations, any rules, but we're going to have to do that on the back end eventually, so it's so confusing for everybody.
It is. And I think there's a side of it that people don't think about. You know, you have the aspect of what that presents to the public, what message it sends. But look at the legitimate business owners that are paying sales tax, federal tax.
That's a great point.
Or state tax. They're paying workman's comp. They're paying all these things. These guys aren't
don't
doing
have to
that.
do
They're
it.
taking this money in, they're putting it in their pockets, and they're making money hand over fist.
Yeah. There was a great article the other day on Empire Report about how much it's cost us as taxpayers in New York State because, again, they didn't have the proper rules and regulations. The cannabis board is nearly non-existent.
Yep.
So think how much we lost and for what? What was the end game? What was the purpose?
Right, right.
I mean, I guess to get votes,
Sure.
right?
Well,
Isn't that what it all boils down to, I
Yeah,
suppose?
I'm sure.
Have you guys had a big issue in Chemung County with the sticker stores?
We have quite a few.
Mm-hmm.
They are popping up on a fairly regular basis. There are certain areas that push back very hard.
Yeah.
You know, and we get a lot of calls on it. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of enforcement behind it.
Mm-hmm.
I know the state police have taken it pretty proactive. They're going after the business aspect of it. So,
That makes
you know what? If it's an angle in there to hold people accountable, I guess it's better than nothing.
Well, I was surprised at how many towns and municipalities agreed to these stores when, again, no one knew the rules. Why?
Right.
Why not say? Because once you opt in, you're always in.
Right.
If you say no, well, maybe opt in later, then you got a little
Exactly.
wiggle room. So I was confused at how many city council and town boards were so quick to jump on it.
Yeah, I agree. And I went to many town boards to discuss, you know, the pros and cons of it. Several, you know, I guess followed my lead, and then
Yeah.
others figured it was a money grab and it was worth the risk, and I was kind of surprised at that.
But wasn't much of a money grab in the long run. I mean, are
No,
they?
I don't think so.
No, that's
not
right.
nearly what they thought.
No, and I think that's the problem. They were seeing dollar signs, and I don't think
Right.
it paid off. Unfortunately, I guess for them, why rush it?
Right.
Let's get to the bottom of because like I was telling you off the air. I mean, you walk down Market Street now, and you're smelling marijuana everywhere. And I mean, I talk about slippery slope on the program so often. I mentioned this the other day, but would you have imagined 5 years ago you'd see 21-year-olds, 20 walking down the street
No,
smoking a joint?
not at all.
Yeah.
And then when you have your kids with you, and this is
Yeah.
a very, family-oriented area. Market Street's just awesome in itself
It is.
and what it represents. And then you have that stench, you have that image. I don't know that that's really what you want to have.
Oh,
in
I
your-
agree. Because I walked by one day at noon, going just down the street, and I saw the Corning execs, management. You had people with their families, and here's people just like, and you don't even see people smoking cigarettes like that anymore.
Right, right.
You know?
Yeah.
it-
And listen, to each his own.
Right,
I'm not saying that, it is what it is, but I think there's a time and place for anything. And if it's offensive, it's offensive.
Right.
Do it where other
Away
people
from
are
other
exposed
people.
to it. Right.
Exactly. And because it is such a powerful smell, I feel bad for the exec from Corning that has to explain to his boss why he smells like pot now after just grabbing lunch,
Yeah.
right? There's plenty of other issues to talk about. We won't just kind of belabor that. But what else is going on in the sheriff's office? What else should the people be aware of?
Well, for us, probably the big topic right now it always is our Second Amendment issues. Albany sending down mixed signals 1 minute. We have to follow this guideline. The next minute it's been changed or overturned. Then it goes back and forth. So it gets very frustrating for the folks that are trying to get their pistol permits, some of the folks that have them. And it's certainly frustrating for us because we never seem to be able to give them a real clear direction.
Right.
And we're navigating through it as much as they are. So that's been our big problem right now.
And I would think it's unfortunate for you because I'm sure some people think that it's you that are your office withholding the information, but you don't have the information.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Two big areas for us right now are the in-person interviews that are supposed to be conducted by the issuing authority, which in most counties is the county court judge.
Okay.
We have about 8,000 pistol permit holders in Chemung County alone. There is no way two county court judges are going to be able to effectively
Yeah.
interview each person to see if they're qualified to be recertified. We certainly don't have the staff to do it. So I reach out to other sheriffs throughout the state, seeing how they're doing it. Most of them are just doing it through a form,
Oh,
a
really?
questionnaire, which makes it part of the process. It just simplifies it for us a little bit. The other component that's a little bit of a struggle for us right now is the requirement for the 16 hours of the firearms
I know.
course. That's really insane. I mean, it's a cost. With your personnel, the overtime associated
Right.
with it. Who's going to pay for the ammunition? What guns are, if we have somebody training somebody and they're not an armor on a specific weapon,
Yeah.
how do we know that's a safe weapon to have on the range?
That's a great point.
Until potentially it's too late. So we have it a little bit of a holding pattern, and it's not so much that I'm concerned about pushback on me personally. I don't
Right.
really think about that as much.
Right.
My concern is pushing some of these folks through than having the state do an audit and saying, wait a minute, Bill Schramm and Frank Acom and these guys were all issued a permit,
Yeah.
but we don't see where they took the class.
That's
we
a
don't
great
see where he
point.
did that sheet,
Yeah.
and now you get penalized for it. So that's the struggle right now.
That's a great point. And I'm surprised. Well, I'm not surprised by anything Albany does, but I would have thought the hunter safety course would have been enough, because originally that was, if you took that, you were already fine. But they got rid of that.
Yeah, and I think the difference is the handgun. It's more concealable, and you can take it into certain locations
Sure.
where you wouldn't tote around a rifle per se. So I understand a little bit of difference there, but it's just keep things simple.
Yeah.
I think all their goal is to make this as complicated
Yes.
and inconvenient for people so they don't go through with it.
I agree 100%.
It's like the semi-automatic rifles.
Yeah.
Come on, give me a break.
That's a great point, because when you get that paperwork, you instantly say, do I really want to go through all this? And it's not like it's a quick process, and that's not because of you. It's
Right.
just not a quick process.
It's not.
So I think a lot of people, and I've talked to a lot of people that halfway through the process,
Yeah, they just
never
get
mind.
frustrated
It's
with
not
it.
worth it. Yeah. One thing that I think scared a lot of people at first, and maybe you could speak to it, is when they said that they were going to check your social media. What can you really do with that? Just scroll down to see what they've been saying?
So I can say that part of background investigations, we do that with
Sure.
potential hires for obvious reasons. But I think that part was struck down anyway because it's protected under your First Amendment right.
Okay.
So people shouldn't be worried as much about that now. But I certainly understand that. A lot of us
Yeah.
scroll through things, and, just because we have a certain viewpoint doesn't mean that we're dangerous. It
Exactly.
just means we don't agree with somebody else. And I think that's where the fine line is. And
I think that's what concerns so many people, because what is deemed right and what is deemed wrong when it comes to a post?
Well, it's
I
a
guess
matter of perception.
Yeah, it's in
really
the eye of the
is.
beholder, I guess.
Sure.
So it depends on who decides if you get a pistol permit or not. So have you found an uptick in people trying for pistol permits, or because of these rules, are they kind of giving up?
No, for us, it's been pretty much a steady.
Steady.
Steady. Nothing. We haven't seen a big decline or increase one way or the other. We've seen some frustration with the semi-automatic rifle laws. I have a friend that manages the Sportsman Warehouse. I
Sure.
went up the day after Black Friday. I said, geez, how'd you guys make out yesterday? And he said, Bill, we had to send 12 people away because they did not have any type of credential that said that they were qualified to possess a semi-automatic rifle. And so what we're doing for folks that already have pistol permits, we are simply adding a checkbox on their permit
Oh, that's a good idea.
that says semi-auto rifle. That's it.
That's
Which
great.
really is nothing.
No.
It's a joke when you think about it.
It really is.
But the other side of that is if I'm not a handgun guy per se, why am I being financially obligated
Right.
to go through the pistol permit process knowing I'll never buy a pistol,
want one. Yep.
but I'm an avid hunter and I enjoy shooting rifles and those types of things? Now I have to go through this whole rigmarole just
Yep.
to be able to get a semi-automatic rifle. It's just
It's typical Albany.
Yeah,
it's
it's just
typical.
insane, and
I mean, why?
That's not fair.
Well, and it really is an attack on people that just want to be law-abiding citizens but gun owners, right? Isn't that the big problem?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk more about this. Let me take a
Sure.
short break. I don't want to run too long. This interview brought to you by M.A. Neal Financial Services. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. This interview brought to you by M.A. Neal Financial Services. I want to get back to our interview with Chemung County Sheriff Bill Schramm. Plenty left to talk about, and thank you so much for the information you've given us so far, because I think the two big issues that when I mentioned you were going to be on, or Sheriff Allard, it's the sticker stores and it's the Second Amendment. Two very different things.
Understandable.
Yep, but understandable because there's so much confusion. Leave it to Albany again. But let's talk about something that I think has been a big benefit to the community, and that's the school resource officers. How has that been going? And I know that you pride yourself in being a part of that program.
Yeah, for us, it's just an awesome program. It's probably one of the programs that we get the most feedback on. We've partnered with 3 different school districts: the Amara City School District, BOCES Academy, and then Finn Academy, which is a privately run institution. And several years ago, we expanded our program into the elementary schools.
Right.
I think the longer that they've been in there, the more accustomed the staff and the students, and certainly the parents who have children in those schools, have become to those officers being there. If they're off for a day, we'll get a call. Hey, when's
Everything
Officer
okay?
so-and-so coming back? I mean, people really, really want that extra layer of security within those buildings, and can understand it.
Security, and I've heard stories where they really build such a relationship with the kids that they become, friends in a way, or maybe not friend, mentor.
Sure.
Someone they look up to.
And that's certainly the bigger component. They're there for worst case scenario,
Right.
but the reality is every single day they're building relationships.
Right.
And you're hoping that these officers that are in the elementary schools are going to build that relationship that's going to transition for these children all through their school years, that they're not going to get to middle school or high school and already have formed an opinion on police officers based on what they've been told by their parents, based on what they see on television. They're going to say, geez, the officer that I deal with on a regular basis is just a great
Great guy,
person,
yeah.
and it transitions into the real world.
And that's a great point. That'll tie in with bail reform here in just a second. But it's a time when the media and so many in pop culture are attacking the police departments. That's why it's nice if these young kids can say, wait, this isn't what I just saw in that rap video or in that movie or on the news. I think that's only a positive.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. And how you've been doing the program for how long? For quite a few years now.
I mean, when I started in the sheriff's office in '90, we had the DARE program.
Right,
That
yeah.
officer it was one officer that would go down to different
Occasionally.
schools to talk about drugs and alcohol. Then it transitioned into a couple school resource officers. Certainly it was a huge thing when we had the Jeremy Getman incident at Southside High School in 2001, where he brought 18 pipe bombs, a loaded handgun, and a disassembled shotgun. That SRO played a huge role in diffusing that whole situation. And then since then it's just grown. So it's been a big part for a long time.
Wow. Doesn't seem like that long, but that's great.
Yeah.
And that, like I said, that ties in because there's so much negativity on the police departments because of news, and I think the media pushing some narrative, which I don't see the end game in that either. But that ties in with bail reform. I asked Sheriff Allard this the other day, what is the end game for bail reform? Why are we not doing it? We have been complaining about this for before it was even law, and it's only gotten worse.
It has only gotten worse. I can tell you, and you could bring any sheriff into your studio from across the state. The first thing that they're going to tell you is that their jail population is substantially lower than what the capabilities of that facility is able to hold.
Right.
We can hold up to 262 inmates steadily for the past couple years. We have been in the range of about 120. Our high end anymore is in the 130s. I mean, that's less than half of our capacity. That tells you that there's a lot of people on the streets that shouldn't be out there.
Right.
We are continually dealing with the same people over and over again. We just had a massive burglary that occurred last week. They took 125 guns, handguns and long guns, jewelry, money. 2 of them are out on felony charges already that they were arrested for and released. You are sending the wrong message, and if you think that by releasing these folks, it's the right thing to do. These people are engaged in this type of behavior. They're not going to change their behavior.
Right.
All you're doing is giving them more opportunity to commit more crimes.
Yeah. I mean, the saying used to be crime doesn't pay, but now,
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
You're a bad guy.
Yeah.
Absolutely does.
yeah, I mean, they're out before you guys are done with the paperwork, for heaven's sake.
Yes.
And then you see Governor Hochul, which I'm not sure if it wasn't a little bit of just PR, but she's trying to put some changes in, and the Democrats are saying, no, we're not interested.
Yeah, that's insane.
It's dangerous.
Yeah, very dangerous.
When you look at when Lee Zeldin came so close, the polls showed time and time again that safety and security were ranked at top, and with bail reform, the law of the land, it just can't be the case.
Well, take this recent example, 125 guns taken.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give accolades to our guys because they jumped on this. We've recovered 80 of them so far,
Oh, that's
which
wow.
is phenomenal. But there's still guns that are unaccounted for.
Yeah.
You're talking 40-some guns. If those guns don't get recovered, where are they going to on the street with
Yeah.
people that shouldn't have them? And then that's going to lead to worse things. So these are the consequences of these failed policies that they don't think through. They don't get the right stakeholders at the table to discuss.
Exactly.
And they push it through thinking it's the right thing, and it's a catastrophic failure.
And the thing that I think when I see the news stories based on it that troubles me so much, think of that victim that shouldn't have been a victim.
Right.
If that person would have just been in jail, and it's on so many levels. We hear about it almost on a daily basis where this guy should have been in jail, but instead he did, especially in New York City, but he did this. He pushed this person onto the tracks or
Right.
robbed this house. Those are victims of weren't not necessary. It's not the right word, but victims that should have never been victims.
100% correct.
Yeah.
Great point.
We've got to take a short break. Stay with us. This interview brought to you by M.A. Neal Financial Services. You don't mind staying for a little bit more, do you?
No.
All right. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. On WYDC TV, Big Fox. This interview brought to you by M.A. Neal Financial Services. The sheriff has been kind enough to stay with us through that last break. Couple last things to discuss. I know by reading the paper and by talking to the sheriff, recruitment and retention has been a major issue. How is it in Chemung County?
Yeah, it's been a struggle. In our correctional facility specifically, we've noticed just difficulty in getting, one, people to take the tests, and two, getting those that do, getting through the background portion of it. So the last test that we had for corrections, 15 people signed up for it. Out of the 15, I think 4 of them had already worked for us. They just needed to take the test to keep their job. So what we're finding is we're hiring a lot of people provisionally, which means that we can bring them on, start them as a regular correction officer, but they eventually have to pass the civil service exam. Which is great. It's a nice luxury to have. We can't do that on the roadside because it's too risky. But, just getting people to take. We're down 14 part-timers right now and 3 full-timers. That's huge for the facility.
Yeah.
And it's, and it has an impact because it causes other people to get stuck on overtime and all those types of things. So.
And that wears on you.
It does wear.
And you want some free
People are
time.
reluctant. They're so afraid to get into this profession.
Yeah.
Whether it's the road or corrections because of all the laws that have changed, the public's view of law enforcement in general. The lawmakers are sending the wrong message that it's geared toward the criminals and not so much the law-abiding people. So I think there's just a reluctance.
If someone's interested in becoming a corrections officer or just joining in general, should they just contact your office and
Yeah,
and see when?
if they just contact our office, the sheriff's office, we can hire as young as 18 years old, which is
that
pretty young. But depending on the maturity level,
Sure.
we do consider people that young, and there's no age limit at the other end. We've hired people in their 50s for a part-time gig, that have already done a career and they're looking to do something different. But they have to go through a background process regardless, and a final decision is made. But yeah, if anybody's interested in this profession, getting their foot in the door, maybe for something down the road, it's a great place to start.
Oh, absolutely. And I worry because when you're down that many people, it's the safety issue.
Sure.
On both sides, right? Both the corrections officer and the inmates.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, right before we go, this went quick, but I know tomorrow's a big day, St. Patrick's Day. I'm sure you have a message for everybody watching to be safe.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great, fun day. It's certainly a time that everybody, I think, looks forward to.
Sure.
And, we encourage having as great a time as you can. Just use good judgment. Make sure you have a designated driver. There's a lot of Ubers out there. Family and friends are great to step up and, give people a ride if they need to. So, just exercise good discretion and
be safe.
And be safe out there.
Yeah, and I hear it's supposed to be really nice tomorrow, right?
Yeah,
It's supposed to be 50.
So a little rain, but it's going to be nice weather.
50, so coming off of that. So be careful, everybody.
Yes.
And we're not lecturing. We're just suggesting, right? So thanks so much for being on the show. I hope that you can be on again soon.
Yeah, anytime.
Oh,
Appreciate
great.
it.
We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. This interview was brought to you by M.A. Neal Financial Services. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio right here on Market Street in Corning. What a fun interview, and I want to thank the sheriff for being on the program. When I say fun, informative, because there's parts of that that are obviously not fun, and we talked with Sheriff Allard as well. Major concerns with bail reform. We've been discussing the budget and what Hochul's proposing, and it seems that the Democrat-controlled Albany isn't even willing to look at bail reform. And we've, I don't know what you'd want to say, we sounded the alarm before this was even in the law, and it actually went worse than we thought. You see at the local level, time and time again, just how bad it affects us. You think maybe, well, it was going to be a city issue, this bail reform, and then, of course, the New York Post did wonderful reporting on it, and it just more and more examples of how this is a failed policy. But this has been going on for years, and it doesn't seem like politicians want to do anything about it. Why is that? Is it for votes? Or to make it seem like they're showing compassion? Well, that's not compassion for, like I said, the victim that shouldn't have been a victim. That's not compassion for the people that are affected by a criminal that's on the street that shouldn't be on the street. So it's always important to hear from our local sheriffs and law enforcement to find out what's really happening on the ground. And I think as long as this quote-unquote bail reform is the law of the land, it's not going to get any better. It's only going to get worse. We see criminals that know how to misuse it. Like I said earlier, crime doesn't pay, but now it does. It becomes easier and easier for them to traverse the laws and to game the system. And that's unfortunate for our local communities. And unfortunately, I think we're seeing it time and time again in the news, both locally, regionally, and statewide. So we have to take one last quick break. When we come back, we are going to show you a couple emails, a couple other things that we want to discuss, but we got to wrap it up quick. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. And I want to thank again M.A. Neal Financial Services for bringing us that interview with Chemung County Sheriff Bill Schramm. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. A couple last quick things to wrap up. First of all, as always, as I look through my buttons here, contact us if you have any questions. Tomorrow, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano will be on the show if you want to reach out and discuss today's program or the last few days. I know we're having just a little bit delay in the audio. We're trying to get that figured out, but I appreciate you staying tuned and letting me know. You can always text me or email me to let me know if you see any errors, because we're learning on the go, and I think we're doing a fantastic job. This is only our 4th program, and they just seem to be getting better every day, if I can say so myself. One email that we received the other day, because we're trying to show your emails and to show your texts as they come in. Let me see there. Oops. There we go. I want to show you, where is it? First, an email from a viewer. Welcome back. Good to see you. And here, we the people have been given a small part of the people's voice back. It'd be nice if our local papers and letters to the editor had letters to the editor once more. Good to see and hear you. Well, I'm glad we received that email, because to me, that's what this is all about. It's about being a voice for the community. Not me. You're the voice of the community. So being a part of the program, it's about you. It's a town hall of the airwaves. As I said, it's radio on TV, but it's also the town hall of television, where you can weigh in, you can let your voice be heard. There's not a lot of opportunity for that. There's not a lot of opportunities to hear from the guests that we've had on so far for that extended amount of time. You see your quick blurbs or maybe see a quote somewhere, but you don't have the time to really pick their brain or hear what they're thinking about the issues of the day. And that's why we're so glad that we've already had a lineup of amazing guests, and that just continues. As I said, tomorrow, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano, so we're going to find out what in the world's going on in Albany. He's always good to fill us in on that. Now, today we had Chemung County Sheriff Bill Schramm. On Tuesday, we had Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard, and I realized we talked about it quickly on the program with Sheriff Allard, but I wanted to highlight it again because it's tomorrow morning. So you wake up in the morning, 7 a.m., you watch Frankly Speaking. You make it a part of your routine. So you tune in, you're watching us here, broadcast live from the Hesselson studio, and then when that is over, you have an opportunity to go to coffee with the Chief and Sheriff. Chief Spalding here in Corning and Sheriff Allard. They will be together tomorrow from 8 a.m. till 10 a.m. So again, you're not going to miss any Frankly Speaking. It's the perfect event. You go over to Wegmans and you get a cup of coffee, and you can let the sheriff, maybe you talk about what you heard and you wanted expanded here on the program. Maybe I didn't cover everything you were hoping that I would get to. We'll talk with the chief or the sheriff about those issues, ones that are affecting you, or maybe just say, hey, thanks for all of your hard work, just like we thank Sheriff Schramm and Sheriff Allard both for the hard work that they do to keep our area safe. So we are out of time. Have a great day, everyone. This has been Frankly Speaking. Thank you for joining us.